Hey creative souls, thanks so much for tuning in. I'm happy that you're here. In this video, I will be talking about the writing practice and habits of Alice Munro. She was a Canadian writer, very prolific, passed away in May of this year, 2024, and left behind, I think, 13 collections of short stories. The information I have comes from a 1994 Paris Review interview with Monroe, and then later from an article in 2013 in The New Yorker, where Monroe was heavily published throughout her life. And I will put links to both of those in the description if you want to take a look. So I'm going to read a short passage to you about what Monroe said about her writing practice. I write every morning, 7 days a week. I write starting about 8 o'clock and finish around 11. I am so compulsive that I have a quota of pages. I'm also compulsive about how much I walk every day. 3 miles every day. So if I know I'm going to miss a day, I have to make it up. I watched my father go through the same thing. You protect yourself by thinking if you have all these rituals and routines, then nothing can get you. As I do more of these, you'll see that while each writer's habits and practices are unique to them, there are some commonalities that run through all of them. For example, starting to write at the same time every day and having a certain number of pages that they have to complete during that time. I talk about this a lot when I'm working with people around creating a writing practice that will endure and serve them well. And it just becomes second nature after a while. It becomes like the air that we breathe. It's like if it's not happening, something feels off, something feels wrong. And I found this to be true of, like, say, a workout regimen where once I finally get it set and solidified, if I miss a day, something just feels off. And the same is true of my writing. So it's this repetition of priming the brain at a certain time of day and to prepare it to produce a certain number of pages. So it kind of starts to wear these grooves in the brain synapses. It gets them used to firing in a certain way at a certain time. And it makes that getting started once we sit down much easier to get into the flow of writing. And so I know for some people, the difficulty is just getting their butt in the chair. And I struggle with this sometimes myself. Like, I don't have a dishwasher, and so I have to do dishes by hand. And I hate it. But there are days when I know I want to write, and I know what I want to work on, but I somehow prefer dishes over the writing. So I think it's a common thing for all of us, but if we get ourselves, our bodies, it's in the body, honestly. We think of writing as this more cognitive kind of thing, but it's a whole body experience. And so getting the body used to being in a certain place at a certain time primes it to develop this need for it, so that when we don't do it, like I said, something feels really off. And it also kind of quickens the amount of time that it takes from the time our butt hits the chair to the writing starting and flowing. So it's just this rhythmic thing that we build into ourselves. And then there's also the mention of the importance of walking. So many writers talk about this. And I think I did a video a while back about the importance of walking to a writing practice. So you can take a look at that if you like. I'll put a link up here above. And it's clear that there is a correlation between the two. Otherwise, we wouldn't hear so many writers talk about it. And science has done studies around it as well. I think in this other video I made, I think I talk about some of those. Another thing that is important to writing that a lot of people don't really think about, and Monroe addressed this in her interview in The New Yorker, and this is just the space and time and permission to stare out the window and daydream. And this is kind of what I was getting at with my recent Do Nothing challenge. In addition to writing, or actually as part of the writing practice, I think finding space and time for doing nothing, which is just another way of saying letting the brain just kind of settle and get quiet so that all those ideas and stories can kind of sort themselves out. And in this interview, she said her husband came to understand what was going on with her when he would see her just sitting and staring out the window. To some people, it would look like idleness or laziness. But daydreaming is a huge part of a healthy writing practice. So I hope you do a lot of it. And if you don't, I hope you start. While writing is about getting words on the page, it isn't only about that. Ultimately, it is that. But there's so much more that goes into it. Monroe went into retirement in 2012 or 13, somewhere in there, and then came back out of retirement 3 months later. And she said this about that time in her life: I think it was the idea that as a writer, you spend your whole life being an observer and then trying to make a record of what you've observed. And you may think when you've gotten older, or old as I am, that you've missed being an ordinary person. You've missed all the things that maybe you think most people spend their lives at. And I think I had made a vow that that's what I was going to do, the ordinary person route. But, she said laughing, I didn't prove to be very talented at it, because after a while I started writing again. So, lovely writers, we don't really have a choice, it seems, when it comes to writing. If you're here, it's either because you're already writing or because you want to write. Either way, if writing has chosen you, you don't have a choice about that. Sending you mad writing mojo. Happy writing.